know birds have feathers? Duh! But that's what separates those wonderful birds from the rest of us vertebrates that are landlocked, other than bats, is the wonderful development of feathers. They're made out of keratin, a structural protein, just like your hair, just like your fingernails, and just like your fingernails are brittle. They can break during the course of time. So that's what they're made of. And again, I think you've got a notebook, you take little notey notes. There's basically 4 kinds of feathers, which you may not know on a bird. The first one is down, and I borrowed these. Last Sunday, I went to visit Tiger. This is a bird that I've been bonded with for 18 years at Imes, and she was in a bad mood. Did not want to get on the glove at all, just wanted to avoid me, and I looked around her enclosure, and if you've been to Imes, her enclosure is by the parking lot. The poor girl was molting. Some birds molt twice a year. Birds that have bright spring plumage, they will molt again in January, February to look as bright as possible. But birds of prey only do it once. And by molting, they are dropping, and it takes a while. It takes weeks to drop every single feather, and some of them are broken. Some of them they've broken over the years, and then grow a new feather in its place. These are fresh. Now it's federally, it's against the law for me to have these other than for educational purposes, and I will be taking them back to Imes. So I just borrowed them. Look at this lovely stuff. Barely can see it. It's down. All birds have down. This is basically bird underwear. The bottom layer of a bird is covered with down. You know, the little nestlings are covered with down to keep them warm. All birds have a layer of down. It's like their underwear. And Tiger's cage a week ago is floating around like a dandelion seed. So it's very lightweight, but again, it's made out of keratin like your fingernails. So that is, you can tell, okay, it's okay to tell your friends you saw bird underwear. When I was talking to 7 and 8-year-olds, they love that. Birds have underwear, birds have underwear. And on top of the underwear, the next layer, which is kind of like the t-shirt on top of the underwear, is a feather which is kind of basically a little of both. It's called a semi-plume. And it is structured like a feather, has a central shaft like a feather. Oh, there's some wool's floating around. But the rest of it is more down-like. So this would be the next layer up. It's called, again, a semi-plume. I think I wrote them if you can read them. You may not be able to read them. Yeah. Semi-plume. So this would be the middle layer. So this is what's going on now. They're adding extra feathers because winter's coming. And they want brand new layered, just like you and I, when it's cold, we go out layered. So a bird layers up this time of year, so that's a semi-plume. Oh. Again, these are fresh. Tiger watched me as I was picking them up and, what are you doing to my underwear? I'm gonna go show some people your underwear. Anyway, on top of that, what have I got next? Is contour feathers. And this is what you actually see. They're in colors and depending on the species. And they're the top layer. It's like the jacket on top of the t-shirt on top of the underwear. And they're smooth and sleek. It makes a bird aerodynamic. And they look much more like a feather. They still got some plume to it. But this is what a tiger, I don't know, you probably can't see it easily. But this would be the outer layer of tiger. Let's get back to tiger. Anyway, let's stay here for a while. Anyway, that would be a contour feather. That's the outer layer. So those birds you've been watching have 3 layers of feathers. And this time of year, you may have noticed they're not as vocal. They're not screaming all the time. they're exhausted from growing these. They have to eat and eat and eat and growing. It's like, I have to grow all of these layers. It takes weeks, don't worry. Like, I often get emails about the male cardinals that are bald-headed in August. And it shows you their skin is actually black, but they're bald-headed. They don't need those crests in August. And so they're starting to molt. They're starting to molt even in August. And now we're in October. Soon they will be finishing up the molt. And then for the final basic feather is simply called a flight feather. It can be either the wing feather or the tail feather. Hope you're not allergic to feathers. So here's one of tiger's tail feathers. But that's a classic, what you would think of a feather. And again, I didn't pick this up last week. This is the quill. We used to make pins out of it because it's hollow. Their shafts are hollow, their bones are hollow. A bird to fly has to be as light as possible, as lightweight as possible. But then that would be one of tiger's tail feathers. So again, her enclosure was covered with these. I said, no wonder you're in a bad mood, bless your heart, because it doesn't feel good. And they grow from the pores just like our hair. So it's got follicles just like it. Whoa! No one is allergic to feathers. I have messed us all up here. Anyway, and they grow from the follicles just like our hair grows from our head, from pores. And, oh wait, let's do this. Why don't we do this? So how in the world does a bird push this through a follicle? No wonder we'd be in a bad mood. They don't. The first thing that comes out is called a pin feather. And it's a thin shaft. When you have a cup of coffee, he's come loaded with show and tell. You'll often be given one of these to stir, and it's like a tiny little straw. That looks very much like a pin feather. So when they first are pushing it through the shaft, this is probably a close size to the tail feather. This is what grows. It's called a pin feather. So this is what's coming out of the follicle. But eventually it will be out to a proper length. It pops open like an umbrella. Isn't that incredible? I should change this to the incredible secrets of birds. Anyway, that's how they first grow is pin feathers. Yeah. And if this is not enough about feathers, I will highly recommend this book. I've read it. Simply called Feathers. And you wonder, how in the world can you write an entire book about feathers? He did. It's great. It's absolutely great. I've read it, and I often refer to it. So feathers, if you're looking for wintertime reading, and you've read all three of my books, feathers. Okay, who's next? Who's next? Let's get into some individual birds. Your Carolina chickadee. You see them every day at the feeders. Your Carolina chickadees. Wow. Did you know they have language? You're not being as vocal now because they don't feel good. But very soon they're going to be in your sleek new winter wardrobes. And very soon they'll get chattery. And I write about chickadee language in my very first book. It came out 15 years ago. It's the first chapter. And it was at the time a professor at UT named Todd Freeberg, and he was studying non-human language. And he read about this report, a thesis out of Illinois, Iowa, a university up there, one of the I-states. And for science to be real, it has to be repeatable. So he was fascinated about the thesis. And so he contacted IMS and said, I'm doing a study about chickadee communication. And can I set up bird feeders at Imes that me and my other grad students can watch? And I think he set them up at Imes, at UT Arboretum, and a couple other places, UT kind of properties. And he first put out empty bird feeder. And you know, chickadees are almost always the first one in. Chickadee-dee-dee. Now both male and female do that call. That's where the name comes from, chickadee-dee-dee. And then they recorded multiple recordings of a chickadee that landed on an empty bird feeder. Chickadee-dee-dee. To our ear, it's the same, chickadee-dee-dee. But then, took it back to UT, slowed it down, chickadee-dee-dee. Couldn't hear anything. Like they were expecting a secret code word, chickadee, and then they created a sonogram. It's a visual representation of the bird call, okay? And they had multiple copies. It's in my book, I don't recall, that was 15 years ago. Anyway, then what did they do? They put bird food in the feeder. A chickadee lands, chickadee-dee-dee, sounded identical. Chickadee-dee-dee lands, and you know what happens when that chickadee lands and there's food, next thing you know, everybody's coming down. Whoa, chickadee found some food. They took that recordings back to UT and created sonograms. There was a whole new note, always in the exact same place. So over the course of that chickadee was that one little note that flies by our head that fast, and we don't understand. All the other birds that understand chickadees understood it. And so over the course of time, he did other experiments at Imes and other places. He put in one of the, I won't get through the whole thing because we don't have that much time. I could probably do a whole talk and a whole book about chickadees. They're fascinating. Over the course of time, he put in a fake Cooper's hawk. Very realistic at Imes, hidden in the bushes. That's the way Cooper's hawks hunt. The Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks, they're like cheetahs. They're hidden. They're the accipiters, that's that genus. The buteos, the red-tailed, red-shouldered, and broadwing, they're flying over. But your Cooper's hawks and your sharp-shinned hawks, they're watching for the bushes. And when they see a bird that isn't paying attention, they take after it, and they're maneuverable. They have a longer tail than the buteos, so they can literally chase, and they're agile. I rescued a few that were chasing so hard they flew straight into a rock wall or something, so they don't have much control if they go round the curve. But anyway. They did the same thing, recorded chickadee, and what happens with your birds, if any bird sees that, even a fake Cooper's hawk, they put out a warning, and all the other birds disappear. If you're ever watching and you've got all this bird activity, and all of a sudden things get quiet, where'd they go? There may have either seen a Cooper's hawk or a cat or something that scares them. And any one of the birds will go, they'll disappear for a while. So that could be happening, but when they took the recordings with fake Cooper's hawk, guess what? Another note in another location. So that chickadee is a sentence, and there's about 8 different things notes can pop up. And again, that's in the first book, but I'm not, well, yes, I guess I was. If you want to buy the book, buy the book. Anyway, where was I? So they have language that, and I read, I think it was Smithsonian, I get several birding type magazines, that they know titmice understand chickadees. They know white-breasted nuthatches understand chickadees. So it's a language that's kind of among several different species. What you will also notice this time of year is chickadees coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. And you wonder, how can they eat all those how are they eating all those seeds? How are they eating all those sunflower seeds? They're not eating them all. They're hiding most of them. A chickadee, this time of year, its hippocampus swells about 30% because it is hiding maybe as many as 1,000 seeds. For that day that you forget to fill the feeder, the chickadee go, oh, no, don't worry, I got you covered, man. I hit one over here in the barbecue grill. Each one's in a different location. They're not like squirrels that'll hide a big pile of acres in a hollow tree and just sit back, oh boy, this is a fight. A chickadee will hide each little sunflower seed or each seed anywhere, here, there, pine cone, piece of bark, barbecue grill, anywhere they can stuff it. So, and you're watching, God, don't worry, they're taking care of you because they know winter's coming and they're taking care of themselves. It's called scatter hoarding, and so that's what's going on. If you notice them coming and go, just keep putting in the food, Again, if you're going to Aruba in November and you're gonna be away for a week, they're taking care of them, okay? They're taking care of them. They wanna go with you. Anyway. This is the most fascinating thing. This was in a recent issue of Living Bird magazine, which is the magazine produced by Cornell University. And it's about a study that's going on with the mountain chickadees out west. One species that here locally, and we covered this last week, we got a Carolina chickadee here, and on top of the Smokies, we have blackcap chickadee. So we have two species and they really don't intermingle. They respect each other. They don't really intermingle. But this one I think she's working on her PhD. Her name is Carrie Branch. She did her undergrad at UT and moved to Cornell, and now she's out west studying mountain chickadees. And what they have learned with one species, single species that can be found in the lowlands and at the top of the mountains out there, we're talking about the Rockies and so, the neurons for the ones that live higher are larger and more packed into their hippocampus. Because the ones that live higher have to hide more and remember more because the winters are longer. And so they may not have food or find food for 3 months or 4 months, and so their hippocampus swells, and the higher elevation, the neurons are larger. Now with me, if I can remember where I put my car keys, that's all the remembrance. Oh, where did I put them this time? Drives me crazy. Anyway, I have to, if I have a talk, I have to make sure the car keys are laying in front of the door. That's how I lock the door, and that's how I get in the car. So anyway, so Carrie Branch is studying mountain chickadees. Again, this is Living Bird magazine. This is fairly recent development. And I suspect if someone decides to study it, our own chickadees, the Carolina chickadees that live lowlands, and the blackcap chickadees, and they look identical. If I have one in each hand, you can only pick them apart by the bigger one, because the blackcap lives in a high elevation. It's got to be a little beefier weight for cold weather. So that if I was holding them like that, they would look at it and go, wait a minute, that one looks bigger. It is bigger. But I suspect the blackcap chickadee that lives at the top of the Smokies also has a larger hippocampus with more neurons. And someday, one grad student, if you're a grad student, mark it down, could be your thesis. So that's chickadees. I call this bird the tufted titmouse. It's really tufted because of the grass. But these little guys are tough and ornery and loud, but not this time of year. They're quieter. They're molting too, but they're very loud most of the year. Beat it, or beat, very loud and booming. And we will cover bird vocalizations. I think it's class number 8. But studies have shown that these guys don't go as far away as they scatter hoard too, but they usually do it within 130 feet of the feeder. So they're hanging around more. You go, where's it going? Where's it going? So it's probably got special places up under your soffit. It crams them in. So it's doing the same thing that the chickadee's doing, but not as far away. So I guess its memory's a little more like mine, but not as good as the chickadee's memory, I suspect. That's another thesis. And I like to call them tufted. This is a preview of our February class about courtship and pair bonding and nesting. A titmouse likes hair for the nest, likes to line the nest with hair, and they will fly down to a sleeping animal and yank out some hair. I once had the love of my life, my dog love of my life. He was a long-haired border collie. He would sleep out on the deck. And I would watch it in the spring. A titmouse would land on him and yank out some hair. And his name is Dwayne. Dwayne would jump up. If he needed to do that old dog thing where he'd circle and say, this is kind of how I crawl into bed at night. I circle and circle and circle until I find the place that hurts the least, and then I'll lay down. But a tufted titmouse will yank hair out of an animal that's outside. They're tough little cousins. White-breasted nuthatch, this is another, they do some scatter hoarding, not as much, and as the other two, but remember, they understand chickadees, and if they're working their way down the tree, oh my gosh, here's a sunflower seed. I think I'll eat it. So I read somewhere that they think if a chickadee hides 1,000 seeds, 40% are eaten by somebody else. Like the white-breasted nuthatch will go, oh my goodness, manna from heaven, and he'll grab a sunflower seed. So that's but the funny thing is, how in the world did they do that? It's the only bird I can, and again, only bird I can think of locally, and I may be, you're taught as a naturalist not to make blanket statements like, it's the only bird in the world that does that. There's 10,000 species, there's probably another one, well, other nuthatches do it. They circle down the tree, most of the birds go up the tree. But the thinking is they develop this habit because they're looking at the tree bark, and it's what they're really looking for are spiders, spider eggs, and sleeping insects, and sunflower seeds hidden by chickadees. But how do the other birds spiral up the tree? These guys spiral down the tree. How did they do that? You'd think that if it was me, I'd fall and land on my toboggan. They have monster feet and talons. That's a bird's cause. I on purpose left off the tail so you can see the foot makes up roughly 42% of the body length. That's like if my feet were 3 feet long. I guess I could spiral down the tree too if I had those talons at the end. So they're incredibly footed for that one little process of going down the tree. So that is the white-breasted nuthatch. Oh, morning doves. I love these guys. Who are you? Who are you? You hear that? And they do not scatter hoard, but they do eat roughly 20% of their body weight every day for food. That's, again, to use them as an example, I weigh 200 pounds. So I would be eating 40 pounds of seeds every day. Don't think I could do it. Anyway, where do they store their extra? They have crops. They have, it's an expandable sac on the side of their esophagus that can, it's much like vultures have it, all birds of prey. If a bird of prey, if you find food, you may find too much food. You don't leave the leftovers, you cram it in your crop. Well, mourning doves do the same thing. You'll notice the mourning dove, it looks swollen. Oh boy, that guy's really loading down. He's got it loaded down. So they store it there in the front. At times, they take care of a turkey vulture named Zoe. She lives out on the opposite side of Tiger, and every now and then you look in there and she's like, whoa. But you also learn don't to try to get her on the glove, because if you upset her, she'll just regurgitate what's in the crop. And it's not seeds. Well, it's not. It's stinky too. So, okay, and birds preen each other, and preening is a way of cleaning each feather. Most birds really do preen themselves. They sit around and scrape any dirt or debris off their contour feathers, essentially. But you know doves, whoa, they're lovey-dovey, and they will preen each other. And dove, most birds this time of year are either molting or migrating or both. These guys are still parenting. They may have 6 broods a year. If all the conditions are right and temperature's right, there's plenty of food available, they can still be on the nest into November. So they may be on their last clutch of the year, but they're very lovey-dovey and take care of each other. And sadly, this is our closest living relative to this gorgeous bird, the passenger pigeon. The last passenger pigeon died September 1, 1914. So that's over 100 years ago. It died, and it died in the Cincinnati Zoo. It had been caught and was being protected. Her name was Martha, and that's when Martha died. And I have seen Martha's specimen. It's on display at the Smithsonian if you ever go up there. And that's the very last passenger pigeon that's documented. And this used to be the most common bird in North America. When our ancestors came, the estimate is that 25% of all birds in North America were passenger pigeons. They would fly through an area and take hours to pass, a humongous flocks. Pigeon Forge is named after the passenger pigeons that once flew into the river there, the Little Pigeon River, and they would nest in the sycamore tree. So this is one species we have sadly lost, and we haven't had them in over 100 years. And why? This is a species we killed and ate tonight. We ate them all. We absolutely, because they had this habit of flying, I know, sad, because they would fly in flocks of 100 or 1,000, there were people called pigeoners that would follow and they would kill as many as they could, pack them in ice, and ship them off to big city markets on the railroad. Remember, there was a day you didn't have a Kroger's or a Food City or a Publix down the road. You ate what you grew or what you could buy at market. And so there was a time you would go to market and maybe, and this would be 1800s, late 1800s, you could buy 2 dozen recently killed pigeons, and that's what would be the meat portion of your supper. So this is one species we know what happened to them. We killed and ate them all. Bless their hearts. Every time I always make sure to take care of my mourning doves. And my mourning doves, they're ground fevers, and I keep safflower on hand, because and every morning when I get up, I try to get a handful. I watch my second floor deck. That's where all my feeders are. I'll throw out a handful of safflower. Safflower, it's a little pricier, but it's bitter. Squirrels won't eat it, so you can be more careless with it. And I tried it once. It is bitter, but birds love it, and so mourning doves will come in and peck, and fill up those crops in case I forget some mornings. But anyway, that was back to mourning doves. Oh my God, Carolina wren. All of us come with a pair of Carolina wrens. Our houses come with a pair of Carolina wrens. They're there all the time. You may be lucky to have 2 pair of Carolina wrens. And they're incredibly vocal, although not so much this time of year. Again, it's quieter because everybody's molting. Everybody's going, oh God, I hate these pin feathers. They hurt. And so they're quieter. Now we'll pass through this, and everybody will start vocaling up soon. But Carolina wrens, they are highly vocal. I love this study I found. Somebody got permission to capture a Carolina wren, and that's federal permission to do this. Bring it in and count the number of times it was vocal in a day. 3,000 times. Cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger is the mnemonic for one of the mnemonics for the call, and both male and female call to each other. Cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger. And typically that's a male and female typically are mated for more than a year. And they're not together side by side unless it's courtship time. But they may be on opposite sides of your house, but they keep track of each other. Cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger. So they're working their way around your house. I'm over here, dear. I'm over here, dear. And so that's how they do it. And so they're very, very vocal. Some of you may not have Carolina wrens, you may actually have house wrens. There's more Carolina wrens in the valley, but several houses that I know of have house wrens instead. So either or, wrens are the same, are highly vocal. Okay. This may be everybody's favorite bird. Cardinal, 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 male and female. You know what they look like. They were at my feeders late last night, and they were there early this morning. They love sunflower seed. They got those. This is one bird with the big sunflower seed cracking bill. It's a grosbeak bill. And other birds like a titmouse will grab a sunflower seed and fly up to a branch and have to tap it open and get to the part, but not these guys. Let's have a crunch, 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 crunch. But in the spring, unmated female would choose the brightest male possible. That's one thing she looks for is he darn good looking? Is he just electric red? Now, that's because, and both birds eat the sunflower seeds. They're after the carotenoids, and the sunflower seeds have carotenoids. So theoretically, if you were to catch two male cardinals this time of year, they look identical, and if the feds would give you the permission to do this test, and just fed one of them sunflower seeds, and it would be nice and bright red the next spring. But if you fed the other one sunflower seeds and berries, this is one that, that's a photo I took just to show the female has red on her too, but this is full of carotenoids. This is one of my, when people ask, what plant do I need to put in my yard? You can't go wrong with a flowering dogwood. It's gorgeous in the spring, and this time of year, it gets those red berries that the birds go nuts over, including the cardinal, and the berry is full of carotenoids. So if you could do the experiment with one bird just sunflower seeds, and the other bird that's eating sunflower seeds and finding red berries, there's a whole list of red berries, including wild grapes, and augmenting his diet, that bird next spring is going to be electric red. It's like, wow! And she's going, God, you're good looking, but look at him. Whoa! I'm going to have to wear sunglasses when I'm around you. Right. So if you got a dogwood, that's what happens. Other birds, mockingbirds, eat berries too. Bluebirds eat berries in the wintertime if they're not finding much else. So anyway, that's a berry filled with carotenoids. Mockingbirds, the Tennessee state bird. You know the birds. They're mimic learners. You may know this. They are always adding to their repertoire. A 8-year-old male may know 200 song phrases, whereas a 2-year-old male may only know 7 or 30, and a female will often pick, again, this is a preview of the February class, she will pick the male with the longest playlist. He's aged. He has experience. She didn't want to raise that 2-year-old male. Anyway, we have 3 species locally that are mimic learners, are always adding. Most birds learn their basic vocalization their first year. They do. The chickadee learns everything about chickadee the first year. But these guys will keep learning and adding, they'll add, chainsaw, they'll add security alarm, they'll add all of these different sounds. And so other catbirds, which we only have in the summertime, and brown thrashers, all 3 of these are mimic learners. And again, a preview of the vocalization class. If you're outside, and again, it's quiet this time of year, but if you're outside and you hear a bird that goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, count the number of times it repeats each phrase. If it's chickadee, 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 whoa, 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 that is a mockingbird. They repeat each phrase 3 times. The brown thrasher repeats each phrase twice. Chickadee, chickadee, whoa, whoa, eat, eat. So you can just count the number of phrases and probably identify the bird and not even see it. With brown thrashers, they're more hidden. They're down, they nest in the leaves, in the shrubbery, And so they're really kind of hidden. And then when the catbird, it's only one. They throw in their word that why they're called catbirds. You'll eventually hear wow. So that's how you can tell them apart only by hearing them. But that's our Tennessee state bird too. I love this. They can eat up to 14 feet of earthworm every day. Wow. That's like this. I'm looking at my age of my audience. That's like Lady and the Tramp when they're sharing the spaghetti dish. Anyway, now the other bird gets the worm. Robins feed very early. Early in the morning, the worms are higher in the ground because the ground is damp and, well, it may be chilly right now. But in the summer, that top layer of ground gets hot and dry, and so the earthworms go deeper to stay in comfortable ground. So the morning, the robin comes out early to watch, and you've seen them, they run along and mostly they think they see movements. There's a theory that they actually hear movements, but I've not found proof of that anywhere. That's another thesis. I don't know how you would do that, but that's the joy of thesis, is actually proving that a robin can hear the worm underground, whatever it sounds like. Anyway, they can eat that much of earthworm every day, so that's the American robin. We all know them. That was probably the first bird you learned in first grade, but it's wrong. They're not robins. They're just simply not. The first people that came over, our ancestors, they didn't know birds. They didn't. Bless their hearts, they were brave enough to come in the first place, but they didn't know birds. So when they got here, they named all kinds of things robin. Early on, the bluebirds were called blue robins. Cedar waxwings were called Canada robins. Hermit thrushes were called swamp robins. Baltimore orioles were called golden robins. Eastern towhees were ground robins. None of them are robins. They're all different. The better name for our own robin is a thrush. It's in the thrush group. If they'd have called me back in 1785, what should we name this bird? I would say name it a rose-breasted thrush. It's a thrush and it sings beautifully like thrushes do. But it's not a robin. But anyway, you can't change that name. That name every time they say, "Can we change the name Robin?" No, the first graders would all be mad at us. So this is a true English robin, and they're smaller. They're more the size of a bluebird, but they do have kind of the robin rosy breast. So this is why all of those birds were named something robin, including our own American robin. But it's like saying, it's an American robin, we don't really honestly know what it is. We do know what it is, it's American thrush. But anyway, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Some things you just can't change. This is my drawing. I think I talked to you before. I love blue jays. A lot of people, no, don't care for them. They're pushy. I just think they're the most gorgeous, gorgeous bird. They're very stately. When they fly into the area, my second foredeck with all of my feeders, all the other birds go, wow. Bird's gorgeous because they carry themselves in such stature. They're larger than the others. They can be aggressive, but to my mind, mockingbirds are far more aggressive. But the blue jays just go, how gorgeous I am. And the other bird, yeah, you're right. I thought the cardinal was gorgeous, but you are beautiful. Anyway, male and female, you can't tell them apart. I have read a study, I'm gonna have to practice it this winter. The amount of black on the sides of their faces and the necklace, you can start, if you really work at it, you can figure out, you can tell individuals because it varies a lot. And that's one of my bucket lists this winter. Is to try to figure out not necessarily the genders, but figure out the different and give you, big necklace, some kind of moniker. But that's my drawing I did last winter during that week of freezing temperatures. And there are corvids, and we know that now that group, and it's not COVID, it's corvid with an R, that's the smartest group. National Geographic did a article about 4 years ago, which groups were the smartest. And the corvids, and that would be the jays, the crows, the magpies, and the ravens. They're all exceptionally smart, and so these guys are too. It's like they're looking around, okay, there's really nothing for me here, and they leave. So anyway, that's the blue jay. In the spring, this time of year, they kind of hang out in a family group, and you may have 2 or 3 jays that come in. It's probably a family grouping, maybe a mated pair and a couple of offspring still with them, or maybe not a mated pair. But in the spring, when you see in spring again is courtship, we'll cover this again in February. If you see a flock of jays flying in, it's female led. That's her courtship party. And all the males in the group are vying for her attention. And when she flies in, she's called a focus female. And when she flies into your yard, all the others follow. And they hang around her, and the males puff up and do everything they can to be noticed. And then the other females that might be with her go, I can do this. And then they peel off the group, and they hope some of those other males will go with them. It's like that third string male. She's not looked at me one time. She's not. I'm gonna go with this one. She may at least look at me. So that's a courtship party that happens starting in the spring. So it's female led. And look what a gorgeous bird. My friend Betty took that photo. Here's their secret. They're gaga over peanuts. Oh, do they love peanuts. If you love your jays like I do, they love peanuts. Titmice love peanuts. That's the only 2 birds that will carry away. And a titmice is like, and they'll kind of fly up to a tree and peck it open. These guys, this one, it's got one already hung up there in its throat, and it's coming in to grab another. And I've seen this. Sometimes they try to hold 2 in their beak at the same time. They can't do that. They can't hold 2 at once. But if you really want jays, plan for some raw peanuts. You put raw peanut, you can buy a feeder or sprinkle them around. But squirrel, that's the difference in, I don't throw a handful of peanuts on the deck with the safflower, the squirrels would find them. So I have to figure out ways to keep the peanuts away from the squirrel. Not that I have any real bugaboo about squirrels, my goodness, I can do a talk about them too. I love to watch them flying across a branch like they're running down to Sonic. And all of a sudden they itch. They're the itchiest animal. They'll be chasing each other, and one up, got a scratch. Poor things. Anyway, that's the blue jay. So let's do the other corvid, the American crow. A lot of people don't care for them. Ha, ha, ha. When you hear ha, 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 they tend to be much higher. They tend to be higher up in the canopy. If you hear a lot of caw, caw, that typically is a group of crows that have noticed an owl or a hawk, and they're trying to chase it away. So when you hear that, just go look. What are they upset about? Now, with any kind of luck, you may see a great horned owl up there going, "Would you leave me alone? I do not eat crow." So, and eventually the owl will go, "Oh God, you're driving me crazy." So, and they'll chase it, but it's not. They think it's a predator, but it's not. Anyway, we now know you can go to YouTube and type in crow. We now know they make tools. They used to define human beings were the only animal that can make a tool. Duh. Anyway, Ann Goodall proved that wrong with chimpanzees. Anyway, crows can make tools. They do all these experiments where they hide a piece of food where it's unreachable, and a crow will come in and pick up a stick or something and drag it to them. So they make tools. They can solve puzzles. There's a great, I think it was a nature video, of how crows recognize faces. If they see somebody that's been mean to them, they will mob it and caw, caw, caw. And I think it was a professor at the University of Toronto, I think, as I'm recalling, and he trapped the crow and put a leg band on it with a number, but he wore a mask. And every time then any one of his students that walked across campus wearing that same mask, whether they were big, little, tall, they were mobbed by the crows. So the crows recognized the face. So they recognize faces, they hold funerals. When I pass, come to the crow funeral. The crows will come up and go, this poor guy, he was always good to all birds anyway. And the most recent study I've read, but I haven't documented it, so I can't, is that a crow will come back to an aging parent and take care of them if they need it, if they're injured or if they're sick. So the crows are gonna know where I live, I tell you. So crows do all of that. Here again, I'm trying to make you love crows. And I do, I get emails all the time, and people love crows, they'll put food out for crows. One lady in Oak Ridge said every afternoon at 4 o'clock, I leave something special for a crow, and they all come in and get them. At 4 o'clock, they know the time. And then there's that famous study of, I think it was a young girl in Seattle, really wasn't a study, but she became famous. She started feeding crows so often, they would bring her gifts. They would bring, if they found a lost earring, they would leave it and take the food. They would find a bauble, a shiny thing, a shiny rock. And so she had a whole box full of crow gifts, simply for, so that's crow, that's crow. Okay, let's move on while we can. Oh, wait, back up, we're gonna get there. Woodpeckers, they have that specially designed chisel beak where they can chisel. They feed on dead trees, not living trees, dead trees or branches, and they chip away looking for carpenter ants, and particularly for pileated. They love carpenter ants. Anyway, seems like they'd hang up. Anyway, or beetle grubs that's under the bark. They'll chisel away and chisel away. All the only species of woodpecker locally is a sapsucker that comes in the wintertime, and it'll drill holes in a living tree, but the tree heals itself, but it'll lap up the sap that leaks out of the tree and any insects that get caught in the sap. But all the other woodpeckers feed on dead trees, and this is, their secret is they have an exceptionally long barbed tongue. I don't know if I can do this. This is a replica. It's not real. You can buy such things for classes, and this was, I used at Imesla. I'll pass it around. That'll show you how the woodpecker tongue wraps all the way around and is hooked right here. So they've got an incredibly long tongue to chip out and use their tongue to go down in behind bark and grab ants, yum, and beetle larvae grubs, yum, yum. And so that's how they do it. And last time we did this, a month ago, somebody asked, I don't remember who, because I was talking about flickers. Flickers feed on the ground. That's the one woodpecker that feed on the ground, and they eat ants. They'll use their woodpecker bill to scrape through an anthill. And they'll eat the ants scrambling out, and then use that sticky barbed tongue to reach down for ant larvae. I'm glad they do it. I don't want ants, but my God. And somebody asked, will they eat carpenter ants? Fire ants. And I've been doing this 20 years. I'm always asked at least one question. I'm clueless. So I went and looked it up. They will, a flicker will eat fire ants, but only individually. They will not tear into the nest because then they get covered with fire ants. And they don't, and it's, you can imagine. So if they land beside the fire ant, they will zap, 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 but not tear into the nest they normally would. So they know the difference. They probably got a little Szechuan flavor to it. It's like, wow, that's a zippier air. I don't think I want a belly of that air. So that's some of the special secrets of woodpeckers. The other one is they have very stiff, rigid tails. When they fly in and land on a bark, they throw down that tail, and it's like the kickstand for your bike. It's very rigid, and it'll keep them parked there while they're hanging on with their feet and their tail, and then they're feeding and chipping away at the bark. So that's the other special talent. Where we at? Bluebirds. We'll cover more bluebirds when we do February, but I think I said this last time, pat yourself on the back. It's the spread of bluebird boxes that literally brought this bird back. It was considered rare in the 1920s up until the 1970s. And all of a sudden, bluebird boxes. And I think now we actually have more birds than boxes because they're starting to claim boxes now. The males will come in, and again, you asked me the question this morning. The male will start to claim a box now, and this is not nesting season, it doesn't need it until February, March, but it wants that territory, and he wants that female bluebird to like him because and he'll defend, and he'll chase away other males or other birds now. So clean out your boxes, make sure they're good and ready, but it's a good time to go ahead and put one up because if you don't have one, or put two. If you put two, they need to be 100 yards apart. That's the tested range. Or if you put one on one side of the house and one on the other side of the house where they can't see each other. But you will see I've got a friend that lives in Fountain City, and she sends me texts. My bluebirds are going nuts over this one box. And it's this time of year. And I said, well, they're grabbing turf right now, and they're going to defend it as long as they can. So pat yourself on the back. Putting up boxes literally brought this species back. It was never endangered. We didn't even have that term back then, but it was rare. It was rarely seen. Cedar waxwing, another one of my favorites. This is another one you want berries. Again, in December, I will do a talk about flowers and shrubs that are native to the area that produce seeds and berries for the birds. And cedar waxwing, as the name suggests, they love cedar berries. And with Eastern red cedars, you may have one, but they're on male trees or female trees. And if you got one loaded with berries, obviously that's a female tree. So cedar waxwings love the cedar berries. They will come down and gobble, but they love other berries too, elderberries. They go nuts over elderberry. So if you're saying, and cedar waxwings are very much like passenger pigeons used to be. They come, you don't see one, you see 30. They fly in and they'll eat every berry on your holly tree. Okay, I wanted you to do it because I wanted to watch you. And so that's part of their name comes from cedar berries. The other part of their name, waxwing, they develop on their secondary feathers. And I forgot to mention earlier that for a bird's wing and flight feathers, these are called primaries. And all the one along the trailing edge is secondary feathers. And so for cedar waxwings, those secondary feathers develop a little extra keratin that is red, probably from eating all of the berries they've been eating. But that's, both male and female have those. And it's the older the bird, the larger the little dollop on that wing. So, but they do love berries. They'll fly in and grab berry. So that's a way of attracting cedar waxwings is berry bushes and shrubs. And if you've got one of these in the spring, don't do anything with it. No, I have people call. I just said, I've got one of those tent worms in and they typically is a wild cherry tree. I'm gonna dump kerosene on it, burn it out. No, birds eat those. Chickadees need hundreds of caterpillars to feed their young. So if you got one of those, that's a living nature bird feeder. They will eat one. I also read somewhere, you can see what I do because I don't watch TV. I sit around and read this. Anyway, they will eat. I read somewhere that an average tent worm nest may produce 2 living tent worms. Thank goodness that'll keep the tent worms going. But this is a bird feeder. I had one off my deck, second floor deck, about 4 years ago, and cedar waxwings found it. And they all flew in and were grabbing caterpillar. So this is a living Mother Nature bird feeder. Just leave it alone, it'll soon be gone. particularly for chickadees. That's the food source they love to feed their young ones is the big old fuzzy caterpillars. American goldfinch, I think we're close to the end. American goldfinch, a lot of people, this is their favorite bird. They may still be nesting late because they will wait to the fluff that's on certain flowers, thistles, and other. I've got one blooming now in a vacant lot near me, and it's called burnweed, and it's producing all of this fluff. And I went, burnweed? Why is it called that? I looked it up. It's really when there's been a fire or a clearing, and this lot was recently cleared. Neighbor's going to put a driveway through it. This came in because they are one of the first plants to take over a vacant spot like after a fire. So it's called American burnweed. That's their job. Anyway, move on. In the spring, these guys are so lively. A major pair will fly around, and this is one of the few birds that has a flight song. They're so happy. Potato chip, potato chip, potato chip. That's the mnemonic. That goes well with cheeseburger, 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 cheeseburger. You guys are gonna go home and some reason crave a cheeseburger and potato chip. Anyway, this is the American goldfinches will zip through, zip through, zip through. That it's pretty, or particularly, you'll hear them singing when they're flying. They're so happy. I found a mate. Potato chip, potato chip. Somebody likes me. Anyway. They do look for fluff, or it's called pappus is the botanical phrase for it, and they typically don't start nesting until May. That's when the seed fluff, they'll go to dandelions if they have to, and that's what the female wants to line her nest with. So they nest late in the season, as does, I don't think I mentioned, cedar waxwings do as well. They're looking for red berries, or any kind of berries to feed their young. So the goldfinch and cedar waxwings are late nesters. And this is a wonderful flower I'll talk about in December. This is purple coneflower that they love, but this time of year, don't dead if you got them. Don't deadhead them, because a lot of people will break them off and want you to encourage maybe one more blooming. But goldfinches, that's a tiny little seed feeder for a goldfinch. And they'll be on that, just grab it away. So that's that. Move on to, this is one of our favorites. This is Hollywood finch. I think you know it as house finch. This was a bird that was once trapped on the West Coast and brought to the East Coast and sold in pet stores as Hollywood finches. Don't you want to buy a Hollywood finch? We trapped it illegal. It wasn't illegal when they did it. We trapped it and brought it to the East Coast, so they were sold as Hollywood finches. Anyway, they're not. That was made incredibly illegal in 1940, so all the pet store owners just opened all their inventory and let them fly away. So now this is more common than our own purple finch. So that's, its true name is house finch. And in a few more months, seemed like November is when I got purple finches last year. You may have both species coming to your feeders. I took both those photos, and they look similar. The purple finch is more raspberry. If I'd have named that one, I'd have named it raspberry finch. But that's the house finch and the purple finch. Look at the sides. These stripes, if you're trying, is that a house finch or a purple finch? Now, purple finches are only here in the winter, but I had them from November until March last year. They were very common last year. But look at the flanks. If their flanks are brown striped, that's a house finch. And if they're pinkish, that's a purple finch. But again, you shouldn't have them yet. Move on. We're about to wrap. When do birds sleep? They sleep practically all the time. Anyway, yes, this is owls sleep during the day, and most of the other birds sleep at night. But even during the day, or in case of the owl at night or whatever, birds have the wonderful ability to sleep half a brain at a time. It's called unihemispheric sleep or slow wave sleep, and typically, if you happen to look out, and I know, of course I do the same thing. Anyway, if you look out and you see a bird on the branch, it's key, because every bird is a prey animal for, say, a Cooper's hawk or a cat, depending on where it's at. it has to stay semi-alert. So they're able to sleep half a brain at a time, and they'll keep one eye open to be alert and can pop awake quickly, and they can switch. Okay, who got the last nap? Was it the right or the left? Anyway, isn't that a wonderful thing? Of course, I think I'm this way too. Around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in my easy chair, and I think, okay, wake up. They're doing that shortwave sleep again. So that's how they basically can do that. They also, birds have a third eyelid. Every now and then you notice something. They seem to close their eye. What was that? They have a third eyelid. It's called the nictitated membrane. That's clear or maybe frosty. So they literally, like you and I, they have to blink. They have to keep their eyeballs wet. But they can flick that over and wet the eyeball and still see through it. So it's yet another way of just staying alert at all times. If you and I were sitting up in the branch and we blinked, maybe too late, Cooper saw. So they're always alert in some capacity. And there's about 8,000 things wonderful. In fact, I think our talk in April is entirely about hummingbirds. Entirely about hummingbirds. Because everything about them is absolutely fascinating. Well, what's going on now? They're migrating. They typically take short hops during the day. If they got a tailwind pushing them, they don't need to fly into a headwind. They'll stay at your feeders if you still have them. They'll stay at your flowers. They prefer the flowers because they can grab some bugs, but they still got to tank up. But eventually they get, this time of year, they get to the Gulf. They got that monster flight across the Gulf, 18 to 24 hours, depending on what. They won't leave until there's a tailwind, but they may fly into a headwind. And a part of that 18 hours are flying in darkness. And the young birds, the first year bird, and hummingbirds are so cussed independent. They don't follow anybody. They go on their own instincts. And so first year birds, hummingbirds that were born in around your house this June, they know where to go in that tiny little brain. There's a wonderful, okay, hold on. Anyway, they fly across the Gulf, and but again, we'll do a whole talk in April. I don't want to give all of it away. They weigh less than 2 dimes. That's the weight of a hummingbird. 2 dimes weigh 4 grams, and they still are able to fly across the Gulf of Mexico. And if you want to know more wonderful migration stories, I recommend this book, Living on the Wind by Scott Winsall. It's another one in my library. It's absolutely fascinating, all these different migration stories, including the one about hummingbirds. So that's hummingbirds. I got one last, I'm gonna do it. Don't boo, don't throw nothing. It's not their fault. We brought them over here. We hate them, they're pushy, they're shovey. They're not protected in any way. If they're trying to take over a feeder, they will not use a bluebird feeder because they can't squeeze through an 1.5 inch hole. That's why you buy a regulation hole. But if you do anywhere else, you can get rid of the nest. They're not protected. You can shoot them. Most people can't. But we brought them over here. It's our bad. Anyway, I read a wonderful book called Mozart's Starling. And Mozart, the composer, had a pet starling that would memorize his songs for him. And so they're incredibly mimics. And the beauty of this book, if you want to appreciate starlings a little more, I know I'm asking a lot of you. She went out and grabbed a baby starling, brought it home and raised it. Totally legal, it's not protected. And that starling learned all kinds of sounds, because it's a mimic learner, and the book is filled with everything she learned about raising a starling. Not that you want to do it, but you can do it, it's legal. So anyway, that's starling, but the one beautiful thing about starling, everything's got something wonderful if you look for it. I live near UT Hospital. This is a murmuration, and I know you've probably all seen them. How in the world do they do that? They don't collide. They don't. And I read a great article, I think it was in Discover magazine. It took them a long time to figure. They were mapping them, they were watching it in slow motion. Physicists and scientists. And they finally figured out that each individual starling only has to keep track of the 7 closest to it. And it'll, as long as it stays away from all 7, it's like you and I on the interstate, except for them it's 3-dimensional. But it's like we're in the middle of a 5-lane, we're always watching, and moving. It's like for a starling, they're looking up and looking down too. But these, I see these often, not quite yet, but soon there'll be a UT hospital all along Cherokee Farms is starling murmurations. And they'll do that late in the day until 1 or 2 will see a group of trees that are empty, and those 2 will dive down to roost, and then everyone goes, and no one hits each other. It's a miracle. Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Leaves. So next month's talk is on owlology. So it's November 12th. The schedule says 11, and all the classes normally start at 11. That one is going to start earlier. I don't know if it'll be at 10 or 10:30, so keep an eye on your email. And the reason for that is because we're going to have, in addition to Lynn, there will be Lisa Tomlinson, and she is a raptor rehabber. And she is bringing with her 3 owls. She's bringing a barred owl. She's bringing a great horned owl. And drum roll, she is bringing a barn owl. So that'll be really exciting. But we want to be able to let Lynn have his time for the talk, and then also let her have her time. So if you guys, knowing that, think you might be able to hang around and sit for 2 hours, we'll start at 10. If not, we can do 10:30.
I think I can do my part from 10:30 to 11 and let Lisa take over.
11 to 12. Okay, so probably 10:30, but keep an eye on your email when that comes out. We'll have it on there. So that's the big
We're all excited about a barn owl.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.